Hello, welcome to my lecture about Jack and Jill. What I would like to discuss with you today is the nature of human communication. So it will be about communication between Jack and Jill, but it will also be about communication between you and me. So the basic question we ask is, how do we communicate? We talk, we write, for others to read what we've written. We draw, we mimic, we nod, we point, we shrug our shoulders, and we are doing all these in order to make our thoughts known to others. The problem with thoughts, however, is that they are private matters. So how can they be shared? Mind you, we behave in a certain way. That is, we, for example, shrug our shoulders, or I can shush you by putting my finger, my index finger in front of my lips, and then you understand my communicative intention. So you identify my communicative intention on the basis of my behavior and the traces it leaves behind. So these traces might be ink spots or noise or broken twigs or some kinds of gestures. The problem is, however, that the traces do not contain thoughts. They serve to convey them. So once again, we ask, how do we communicate? The traditional approach to communication assumes that the indispensable condition for communication is a common language, a kind of common code. Thus, communication consists in double conversion. First, some meanings come to your mind, then you encode them into sounds, and then the sounds are perceived by the audience, and they convert them into meanings. So the assumption here is that the message intended is exactly the same as the message received. So the addressee will recover the same concepts that occur in the mind of the speaker. Now, some further consequences of that theory are that for every thought that can be linguistically communicated, there is a sentence identical to it in its content. This is just a repetition of what I have just said, okay? The communication of a thought is achieved by uttering a sentence identical to it in its content. Something comes to your mind, and then you find a word that expresses this idea, that is a repetition of that idea, and you simply produce it, okay? So the only way to communicate thoughts is to encode them. The consequence of these assumptions is that our semantic resources, the semantic resources of the language we use, must be rich enough to encode all communicable thoughts and all communicable concepts. So whatever comes to your mind, whatever concept comes to your mind, there must be a word somewhere in the inventory to express it. So every concept is encodable. Now the question is whether the code theory of communication is plausible at all. So mind you that the theory assumes that the relationship between the concepts in our mind and words that we have at our disposal to express them is one-to-one, so that it is an exhaustive mapping. But is it really plausible? I suppose that every one of you knows what you keep in your drawer. Of course, you may keep different things, so some perhaps old photographs and some coins and some fiber pens and perhaps a ruler and the keys, whatever. Yet you have some general idea what can be found in your drawer, which means that there is a concept in your mind, what you can find in your drawer, even though there is no word to express it. Now, similarly, I believe that you all know more or less what you can buy in a do-it-yourself shop. So, for example, some tools or glue or perhaps nails or bolts. So again, you more or less know to expect in a shop like that, yet there is no single word that would express this very idea. Now, mind you that if I want to describe my child's best friend, my daughter's best friend, I have to use the descriptive expression. But even you, if you want to talk about your best friend ever, then you have to use this expression, my best friend ever. There is no single word expressing the concept of your best friend. Some of you may also have a concept of a relative that is either your uncle or your aunt, okay? So uncle or aunt, and you might be surprised to learn that there is no word like sibling in French, though it would be counterintuitive to assume that the French do not have a concept of a sibling. So as you can see, all these examples show that the correspondence between words and concepts is not one-to-one. Let me just give you some further examples. Could you just have a look at the personal pronoun it, all right? It is semantically empty, and you do not know what it refers to unless it is used anaphorically, unless it refers to it has an antecedent in the previous context. So in such situations, it may refer to a number of different things. So you have just one word that may refer to numerous concepts. Now, if you think of the verb to open, and if you try to visualize all these activities, you may open a bottle or a book, a surgeon may open a wound, or you may open a washing machine. So each time opening involves a different sequence of movements. Okay, so each time you visualize a completely different activity, which means that various types of openings are different concepts. Yet you use just one word which is adjusted to the situation. One more trivial example will be the use of synonyms. So snake and serpent, one concept, two words. Homonyms, bank, two concepts, one word. So as you can see, the relationship between concepts that occur in our mind and words that are at our disposal to express them is not one-to-one, okay? So perhaps there are fewer words than concepts we can think of, which means that more may be communicated that is actually encoded. If I say it's late, and as you can see, it is used out of context, you do not know what I mean. Is it late in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening? Or perhaps it is too late in my life now to start, for example, learning a new language, all right? If I say that I'm tired, again, you do not know whether I'm dead tired, whether I'm exhausted, or perhaps I'm tired not to want to go out for a drink to a pub. So as you can see, in the context, obviously it is clear. You can determine the degree of my tiredness, or you can determine how late is late and what it refers to, what kind of situation it refers to, which means that you can communicate more than in code. You do not have to specify all the details, provided we have access to the same context. Thus, we can see that we should perhaps distinguish between sentence meaning and speaker's meaning. So sentence meaning will be just the words uttered, and speaker's meaning will be the communicative intention of the speaker. All right. So if I say that I'm tired, it may be just a refusal, or if I say that it's late, I may want you to hurry up. So as you can see, you can identify these two levels as if. Now, sentence meaning should be treated as a sketch. In this skeletal form, this sketch must be fleshed out, okay, in order to arrive at the speaker's meaning. Now, fleshing out takes or proceeds via inferencing, that is reasoning, some kind of deduction. And of course, you may think that deduction is a pretty complex process, yet inferencing proceeds in an effortless way. It is fast, and we are not even aware how what amount of inferencing is involved in our everyday communication. So now let's modify the picture. First, we decode the sentence meaning, and then we infer the speaker's meaning, as if you were filling in the questionnaire. Now, the adherents of the code theory of communication still believe that the possession of a common language is of fundamental importance, is of primary importance, but they take into account a certain amount of human intelligence, and they believe that it is helpful. So instead of saying the plane on which your mother is coming is late, so late that we cannot wait for her any longer, I told you we should have stayed at home, we may simply say it's late, and in the appropriate situation, in the appropriate context, the addressee will be able to derive the meaning spelled out in the first paragraph. Okay, so what the adherents of the updated theory believe is that the common code is of primary importance, whereas inferencing is just an optional add-on, which means that the coding and decoding process can be simply speeded or bypassed by inferential routines, in which case encoding is not necessary. Now, I would like to propose a different theory for you to consider. And as you can see, it is called the inferential revolution. So according to this new view, human communication is first and foremost a matter of inference. So it is of primary importance. Language is the add-on. In the history of mankind, people first, in prehistoric time, communicate inferentially, and then language appeared. So we know already that some concepts do not map onto words. And now let's assume that most mental concepts do not map onto words. And we also should assume that there are far more concepts we can think of than words available to us to encode them. So before we are back to the nature of human communication, let's go back to Jack and Jill. And as you can see, Jack is watching Jill picking berries. So Jack can interpret Jill's behavior. First of all, he is observing a sequence of bodily movements, but he's not satisfied with that. He asks himself what Jill is doing and why she's doing that. So could you please notice that this is again characteristic of our observations of all people. If we're observing people, then we are not satisfied with the perception of their bodily movements. We always ask a question, what they are doing and why they are doing this. So these are the questions we ask. Okay, which means that we try to attribute a particular intention to the people we are observing. So here the intention is to gather berries for eating. This is Jill's intention. Now we try to read the minds of the people we are observing, right? This is called mind reading. Of course, we may be wrong, but it does not matter. But that's what happens. If you are alarmed, if you see something unexpected in the street, then you always want to know what actually he's doing and why he's doing this, okay? So the observed behavior may be interpreted in two ways, in physical terms and in intentional, that is mentalistic terms. We always try to attribute some intentions or beliefs or desires to those we are observing. So we look for plausible beliefs, plausible desires and intentions that we can attribute to those we are observing. And we cannot help attributing intentions to others. This is how we human beings have evolved. So mind reading is simply built in our cognitive system for interpreting the behavior of others. Now, in academic terms, this mind reading is called metarepresentational capacity, okay? Understanding the behavior of others as the carrying out of an intention is more insightful than seeing it as a mere movement, okay? So the attribution of intention, this is metarepresentational capacity, attribution of desire, attribution of belief. Now, the next point is phrased in a very academic way, so I don't want you to get discouraged, but we'll just read it out. The ability to entertain the representations of representations. So this is meta-representational capacity. Now, coming back to Jack and Jill. So could you please notice that Jack perceived Jill's intention, that she was picking berries because she wanted to eat them, not just her movements. Moreover, he also concluded that he could attribute a certain belief to Jill, that she was picking berries, she wanted to eat them, so she believed that the berries were edible. Okay, this is extremely important, and this is very advantageous for us. Inferring others' beliefs from their behavior means that we can discover facts of which we have no direct experience and make them our own. Okay, this is just a process of education. You accept something that you have not experienced, that you haven't seen, for instance. Okay. Now, coming back again to Jack and Jill, mind you that Jack did not know the berries were edible, but now he knows. So Jill provided herself with food, but at the same time, she provided Jack with information that berries were edible. Now, of course, as you can see the picture, we cannot exclude that the assumption that she was not so well-intentioned and that actually she wanted to misinform Jack because she hated Jack. But this is, you know, a different story. Now, what I want you to notice so far is that as yet, we are not dealing with communication. This is just mere observation of someone's behavior. And on the basis of this, of the observation, we can attribute intentions, desires, and beliefs to others. So this is our meta-representational capacity. And now we can go back to overt communication. Imagine that now Jill gives evidence of her intention. So she's mimicking eating berries, okay? So Jack infers what her intention is from the evidence that she's given him. So if I place my index finger in front of my lips, you understand that I want to shush you, that I want you to calm down. So you can interpret my behavior because you attribute a particular intention to me. Or if I shrug my shoulders, then you may conclude that I do not care. So you are capable of inferring what my intention is from the evidence I have given. Could you please notice that whatever I produced or whatever Jill produced is not linguistic? So the evidence I provided you with is not linguistic, okay? So we might conclude that we can communicate without language, right? So Jack and Jill, as well as you and I, are creatures capable of communicating in the inferential manner. And now we can perhaps introduce language. Words are much better than mimicry. Jack can infer Jill's meaning from her verbal behavior as easily as he does from her miming. With a richer language, Jill can give evidence of more complex meanings. So in other words, language simply facilitates communication, but it is not the primary importance. It makes communication more efficient. The capacity for inferential communication, our capacity metarepresentational capacity created an environment in which language would come as a major advantage. Okay, so that's what I've said. Language simply makes communication better, more efficient, easier, and more complex, obviously. So now I can perhaps provide you with a new story. Human communication is a byproduct of human meta-representational capacities. Language made inferential communication more effective. It did not change its character. All human communication, whether it is linguistic or non-linguistic, is inferential in nature. So first inference, then language. In whatever way we give evidence of our thoughts, whether it is a word or a gesture, we rely on our audience's ability to infer our meaning. So you infer the meaning on the basis of my gesture or on the basis of my speech. You simply attribute an intention to me. Now we can go back to the relationship between words we have at our disposal and concepts that occur in our mind. So most concepts do not map onto words. There are far more concepts than words. Now let's start from concepts that are not fully fledged. That is, certain words that are not fully fledged, such as my, have, near, long. So all these words, mind you, have some conceptual content, but their semantic contribution must be contextually specified. Let me explain that to you. So if I say my, you cannot be sure what I mean. If I say my book, does it mean that I own the book? Does it mean that I'm currently reading it, that I've written it perhaps, that I've borrowed it from the library? So as you can see, it may be mine in many different ways. Now, have, as you know, again, has many different meanings, possession being just one of them. If I say that something is near, you never know how near it is. If I say that something is long, you never know how long it is, whether it is as long as the Nile or as a short ruler that I've got in my drawer. So, as you can see, to determine the exact meaning of words such as my, have, near, and long, that is to identify the concept behind them, you have to specify them contextually. So in other words, we may say that such not fully fledged concepts as my, have, near, and long are pro-concepts, potential concepts. Now, I would like to claim that actually all words behave as if they were pro-concepts. Even if they encode full concepts, what they actually convey in an utterance has to be contextually worked out, has to be contextually determined. If I say that I'm happy, you do not know whether I'm merely glad and satisfied or whether I'm elated, ecstatic about something, whether it is perhaps bliss of some kind. Now, okay, look at the colors. The number of perceptual stimuli we can discriminate is far greater than the number of words available, and colors constitute a very good example. So we may have a concept for every nuance, right? But so we discriminate quite a number of various nuances, various shades, yet there is just one word. This is blue. Of course, we may modify it. We may say dark blue, light blue, navy blue, warm blue, cool blue, whatever, but it is still blue. But we have in mind various shades of blue, okay? So again, as you can see, we have more concepts that there are words at our disposal to express them. Now, just to give you one more example of what a pro-concept, I mean, why I believe that every single word is a pro-concept. Let's say a few words about idiosyncratic concept. Idiosyncratic means specific, occasional, circumstantial, restricted to a particular context, one context. So could you please notice that we very frequently form idiosyncratic concepts? These concepts are non-lexicalized. Now, just look at this dialogue. Do you want to go to the cinema? I'm tired. Come on, you're not that tired. So now what Jill puts across is that she's tired enough not to want to go to the cinema. So she specifies, well, she does not specify, but we, I mean the audience, may determine the exact degree of tiredness, okay? And then Jack says, you're not that tired. So he does not deny that she is tired. He denies that she's tired to the degree conveyed by her utterance. So he denies this very circumstantial, very occasional notion of tiredness that is not lexicalized, okay? You cannot find a specific lexical item that might express this degree of tiredness, okay? So this is an idiosyncratic concept and it does not exist in the lexicon, as you can see. Or Jack and Jill are visiting a museum and then Jill says, I'm tired. It is a slightly different tired, as you can see, slightly different meaning. What Jill is trying to convey is that her enjoyment is diminishing, that she would like to cut short the visit, that she would like to go back to the hotel, and that she would like Joe to go with her. So again, a circumstantial, context-dependent notion of tiredness. Now, one more example of an idiosyncratic concept. So Jill is at an Italian trattoria in China, mind you, and then she says, I love Italian food. And the question is whether what she's been served is really prototypical Italian food, or perhaps it is Jill's idiosyncratic category of food. Okay, mind you, this trattoria is located in China. The chef might be Chinese. He has never been to Italy, so he obviously has some idea of what Italian cuisine might be, but this is his own idea, okay? So very idiosyncratic, and the same is true about Jill's idea of Italian food. So now, mind you, that a word which encodes a given concept is used in this context to convey another concept that neither this word nor any other expression in the language actually encodes. You have your own peculiar view of what Italian cuisine should taste like, okay? What should it be like? And whether it is true or not, whether it is close to prototypical Italian food is a different story. So now I just want you to notice, on the basis of all these examples that we've discussed, that words should be treated as pointers to concepts. Okay, so the occurrence of a word in an utterance provides a pointer to a concept involved in the speaker's meaning. You try to identify this concept, and the word helps you because directs you somewhere, okay, to the concept, but it is not the concept itself. Mind you then that the concepts that occur in the mind of the speaker do not have to be the same as the concepts in the that are recovered, let's say, in the minds of the audience. The messages do not have to be identical. So given the inferential nature of communication, encoded words may be used to convey numerous concepts. And there are far more concepts in our mind minds than words in our language. So here you see different circumstantial notions of tiredness or individual views of Italian cuisine. So these are peculiar concepts that we want to put across, okay? Which means that communication succeeds as long as the word points the hearer in the direction intended by the speaker. The messages do not have to be identical, okay? Utterances are to be treated as pieces of evidence of the speaker's intention, just the way our gestures are. Shushing people, shrugging your shoulders, the same mechanism. And utterances are as well to be treated simply as evidence of our intentions, desires, and beliefs. Thank you for your attention.